All right, Mike Coppinger, ESPN Boxing Insider. The breaking news on Tuesday: Canelo Alvarez is not going to fight Jaime Munguia in his next fight. This is the clarity Canelo provided in an interview with TV Azteca, where he announced his fights are going to be on TV Azteca for the foreseeable future. That's great. The people of Mexico can watch it for free. And when pressed about his immediate future, Canelo did rule out Jaime Munguia as his next opponent and said an American fighter would be his next opponent. Now, Mike, that whittles down the list pretty significantly. So I would say that probably means Canelo and Jermall Charlo are going to dance on May 4th. I got to be honest, I'm disappointed in that. That's probably, if you're going to make a list of potential Canelo opponents, that's the one I'm least interested in. What's your reaction to the likelihood of Canelo facing Jermall Charlo next?
Well, I mean, that's been the expectation all along, right? None of us really, at least I didn't believe that he was fighting Munguia. Yeah, obviously, there's the issue with Munguia's promoter, Oscar De La Hoya. Canelo had a very public divorce with Munguia's promoter. And again, you and I know Canelo pretty well at this point. Canelo's usually like, all right, if I don't like you, I'm not going to give you the opportunity to get a beat down from me. I'm going to deny you the opportunity and the payday. So I'm not going to say never with Munguia. I think that's one obstacle. Now, Charlo, it's hard to get excited for that fight. Number one of which I think is that his own brother put up zero effort against Canelo in September. He ran around the ring for 12 rounds. And I do think the term running is used too often, but that was running. And so there's no brotherly revenge angle. Jermall Charlo's fought once in what? The last 2.5 years. He didn't look particularly good against Jose Benavidez Jr. And we know who's going to win the fight. We know it's not going to be a great fight. And again, from the narrative standpoint, there is no brotherly revenge angle after what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, this fight sucks. I'm sorry. Like, I know people are going to listen to this and say, oh, Mannix, you're the zone guy. You want to see Canelo fight Munguia. And there's some truth to that. I would have loved to have seen Canelo fight Munguia. I think that would have been an incredible atmosphere in Las Vegas against two popular Mexican fighters. I mean, Canelo's still the biggest star amongst Mexican boxers, but Munguia's kind of got that people's champ vibe where, a lot of these guys, these fans come to see this destroyer from Tijuana mow somebody down in an entertaining fight. I just think that was the better fight. We can both, for the purposes of clarity, we both want to see David Benavidez, but that's been off the table for a while now. Jermall Charlo does nothing for me. It does nothing. Yes, he's still undefeated. Yes, he still has a middleweight title for reasons that pass understanding. Yes, he's got a name in American boxing. But to your point, he hasn't fought in forever. His first fight back was on an undercard. He didn't look all that good against a guy like Jose Benavidez, who backed him up. A blown-up welterweight was backing him up in that fight. What the hell is Canelo Alvarez going to do? A guy that lives to back his opponents up, that has way more power than Jose Benavidez. It's just a bad fight. It's a bad fight. It's going to be a tough fight to market. I just don't get it. I mean, Canelo can fight whoever he wants and make as much money as he wants. That's what he's earned at this stage of his career. But you make the list. Benavidez is at the top. Munguia, Terrence Crawford, they're in that mix. Jermall Charlo, to me, is not on that mix. I just don't get it. And I think if and when it gets formally announced, it's not going to be received very well at all.
Well, I think maybe the most unfortunate part of all this, Chris, is that you and I would have loved to have seen Canelo versus Charlo a couple of years ago. That was one of the best fights you could have made for Canelo. Charlo was looking really good at 160 after being a champion at 154. I always thought he was the better Charlo between him and his twin brother. And, he has the style to give Canelo problems, but between the inactivity and he's older now, and he didn't look so good in his last fight. And again, this is not Jermall Charlo's fault, but I think the number one reason that at least I don't want to see the fight, and probably everyone else as well, is we just saw his twin brother run around again for 12 rounds, put zero effort in. And of course, they're different people, but it takes a lot away from the fight, even though it's not Jermall's fault, of course. And what about the general public, right? Canelo is a star that casuals know. Like my friends who don't watch boxing know who Canelo is. How many of them and how many of the public at large are going to think this is a rematch? They're going to see Canelo-Charlo. How do you tell those people, hey, this is not a run back of that really boring fight you just watched?
There was always going to be, Mike, backlash to whatever, opponent Canelo chose that wasn't David Benavidez because, even some of the most casual fans kind of know Benavidez at this point. They kind of know that this is the next guy in line to fight Canelo. So there's always going to be some backlash. But if you did a fight with, say, Terrence Crawford, you could make the case that you've got number one pound for pound jumping up in weight to try his luck against the former number one pound for pound, who is still the biggest star in the sport. I think Crawford would have made a good fight out of it. He wouldn't have run. He would have made a good fight out of a Canelo fight for as long as it would have lasted. Munguia, we already outlined the reasons why that would have been a good fight. And look, I think the outcome of Canelo Munguia is that Munguia winds up like face planted after taking a big shot from Canelo. But you can kind of see a lane for Munguia to win by kind of taking a page out of the Dimitri Bivol playbook, which is just overwhelm Canelo with punches and hope that your chin holds up. I see you shaking your head. I know, I get it. Like it's a very, very narrow lane. It is, wafer thin, that kind of lane, but there's a lane.
It's a bicycle lane.
It's a bicycle lane. Yes. At this point, though, I don't see that path for Jermall Charlo. Maybe a couple of years ago when Charlo, looked like a guy with good power, operated behind a good jab, but so much has happened to him over the last couple of years. And I have a lot of sympathy for it because seeing kind of his personal life devolve has been tough. His relationship with his brother is not the same. He's just not that guy. He's not that guy. So look, best case scenario, he stands and fights, trades, gets knocked out with like a body shot. Worst case scenario is he kind of stays behind that jab for 12 rounds, and we're stuck with another 12-round decision for Canelo against a Charlo.
Yeah, it's not an appetizing fight. It's hard to get excited about it, and it's unfortunate because, again, we're in a sport with very few stars. Canelo is by far the biggest star. He is the face of boxing. Sorry to any Gervonta Davis fan that's listening to this, but there's no question about it. So when one of those two opportunities for those 12 months is wasted on a fight that we're not excited about, that's always a disappointment. And it's not just disappointing for us, but it's bad for the sport as a whole. Now, again, like you said, Canelo can do whatever he wants. No one's dictating to him. But you're the betting expert, Chris. What does the line look like, in your opinion, on a Canelo-Charlo fight?
It's double digits. It's 10-1, 11-1. And look, to be fair, it would have been 7-1, 8-1 maybe for Jaime Munguia. So he would have been a favorite against anybody. He probably would be a favorite against David Benavidez, but it would probably be 2-1 if he's a favorite there. But this one, I think the odds are going to be really, really high. I think odds makers saw what Charlo looked like in his last fight. They saw how devastating is the wrong word, but Canelo looked good. Like he backed up Charlo, and Charlo, the only time he was standing in front of him, he took a big shot and went down. I think they're going to be high, man. I think they're going to be high. And look, again, Canelo's legacy is secure. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's the undisputed super middleweight champion. Like he doesn't have to prove anything. I just think there was a better fight for him, and that fight was Jaime Munguia, which was right in front of him, and there for the making. Last thing on this subject, does this tell you anything about what Canelo's going to do this year? Like, I mean, you talk to the same Team Benavidez people that I do. They seem to believe that it's happening in September. They believe that a Canelo Benavidez fight is going to happen. At this point, I don't know. Crawford's still going to be out there. Maybe he's going to have some time on his hands end of the year. Look, this opens the door, and I don't want to get into this now, but if Berlanga looks great in his fight against Patrick McGrory in a couple weeks, but no, like let's say Munguia looks fantastic against Edgar Berlanga in June of this year, like the door could be open for him to step back in. Does this tell you anything about what Canelo is going to do in 2024?
I don't know that it tells us much, Chris, and I've heard the same things you have heard that you mentioned, but look, I think Canelo gets a bad rap, and I know it comes with the territory of being the top star in any sport, but I don't believe any of this nonsense that Canelo is ducking David Benavidez or he's scared of Benavidez, because he's proven time and again that he's willing to fight tough guys that have far lesser name than Benavidez and carry much more risk, arguably, than Benavidez. Dimitri Bivol. No one was banging down the doors for Dimitri Bivol, and in fact, he picked Bivol over Jermall Charlo. So he did that. He fought Austin Trout. He fought Arizona Delar. I have a hard time believing, with the way Canelo is and who he is as a person and as a fighter, that he's going to let his career go by without fighting Benavidez. He knows that he would be that would follow him. That would be part of his legacy. And I don't see that happening. I would be pretty surprised not intel, just gut feeling, if Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez in September.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Because again, he doesn't duck anybody. Maybe he doesn't fight guys on the timetable that everyone would like. Gennady Golovkin is a good example of that, but he eventually gets them. He takes on the biggest challenges. And Benavidez is that big challenge. Maybe it's an opportunity for Benavidez to get one more big win, going into a September showdown if he wants to get another fight in there. But I'm looking forward to a press tour because I would love to just understand Canelo's thinking, right? Like, tell me what the rationale is behind this. Tell me what went into this decision to face a Jermall Charlo, because as we sit here, Mike, I just don't get it. I don't get the fight overall.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of, and I don't know this for sure, but I know that Canelo's 3-fight deal with PBC, as I'm sure you know as well, had included, pre-approved names, and Jermall Charlo was one of them. And that was always the plan. The plan was actually to fight Jermall Charlo, as we know, in September. He pulls out. Jermall Charlo steps in. So I'm sure that there was some arrangement. All right, I fight you first, then I'll fight you after. Maybe Canelo sees it as, all right, hey, look, he's one of the pre-approved names and I can get an easy win and look dominant and get my money. I don't know. I can't get inside his head, but you're right. It's hard to get excited about this fight. Even if Charlo talks his best game, it's still hard to get excited about it. But one last thing for me on the Benavidez stuff. I don't buy that Benavidez is some big favorite against Canelo. I would still pick Canelo in that fight. And I'm not making him a prohibitive favorite, like you said. Maybe, like you said, maybe you'd be 2-1, or actually you didn't say that, but
yeah, 2-1. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Look, Benavidez, I think, has a style that's not I'm not gonna say tailor made for Canelo, but it's certainly this kind of style Canelo likes. He's gonna stand right in front of you. He's gonna be wide open for counter shots. He's not gonna have to go find him. Canelo can lay on the ropes, and he's an incredible counter puncher. So can Benavidez beat Canelo? Sure. But I don't think that Canelo's looking at this being like, oh my God, there's just no way I can win this fight.
No, and I've said this often about Canelo opponents. It's one thing to fight a certain way, to fight a volume punching way when you're fighting guys not named Canelo. It's another thing to do it when one of the best counter punchers in boxing, a guy with blurring speed to the head and to the body, is standing in front of you. Maybe Benavidez will do it, but that first shot that comes back, that's going to have him rethinking a lot. Only Dimitri Bivol really has done that. And Gennady Golovkin in the first couple of fights have been willing to trade with him. Everybody else gets to taste that power, and they don't want any part of it. So look, how about just to finish this? Maybe we'll give Jermall Charlo briefly the benefit of the doubt and say he's going to defend the family honor. He is going to go out there and at the very least go out in his shield, because that needs to happen. Because Mike, if it looks like Charlo won, that's not good. That is not good for the legacy, so to speak.
I mean, could you imagine if Charlo fight happens and he gets in there and it's like a carbon copy? I mean, there might be tomatoes thrown in the ring.
Oh,
I don't know what's going to happen, but I would say, even me personally as a media member, my tolerance is growing thin for these kind of fights after what we saw between Shakur and Edwin De Los Santos and Canelo and Charlo and Teofimo Lopez against Jermaine Ortiz just last week. It's like, but again, I think those guys, not De Los Santos and Shakur, but Jermaine Ortiz, to an extent, he was boxing, not running. What Charlo was doing was running, and he did so after talking a tremendous amount of trash, promising this, vowing that, and again, it's not Jermall Charlo's fault, but unfortunately, when you're a twin brother, some of it falls on you.